being a Northwest guy is you're raised in a batting cage, you're raised in an indoor facility, you're taking ground balls off of, you know how to work in limited space.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, and I know I'm biased because I'm a Northwest guy, but I will take a Northwest guy over somebody from another area any day of the week because I just think they're tougher. I just think they're tougher guys.
I think that's one of the best things about baseball is it still is a way that you can really develop toughness and develop, loyalty and all those kinds of things that we want out of young men in particular.
Welcome to the Pacific Northwest Fungo Banter Podcast, where we highlight all of the great coaches of the Pacific Northwest. Now, here are your hosts, Eric Sorensen, Jason Jarrett, and Kelly Gow.
Hey, Fungo Banter fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Pacific Northwest Fungo Banter Podcast. Eric Sorensen here as we are about to bring you part 2 with Billy Boyer, your infield and field coordinator for the Detroit Tigers in the minor leagues. Coach is probably in Florida right now enjoying some nice sunshine, enjoying some baseball as we are enjoying a snowstorm here in Ellensburg. And pretty excited because we're all about to kick it off here soon in a couple weeks here in Ellensburg at least, or I'm sorry, in the state of Washington, March 3rd as we do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1 as we talked about him back and forth between the pros and the college scene, and pretty excited to break down infield play with him and just coaching guys up and breaking the language barrier and all that stuff. It's a fun episode. So thoroughly want to hear from all of our loyal listeners what you guys thought about this thing. Please go on our Apple Podcast, Spotify, and everything and rate and review. We love those things. You guys have been awesome with that. And that just helps us grow this podcast more and more. Big thank you to Safeguard out of the Tri-Cities. If you're at the clinic there a weekend, you got yourself a nice lanyard. They made those. It was awesome. Top Tier Sports. If you're still looking for a tournament this summer, go check out toptiersports.com. Max BP, pretty excited about those guys, and I'm fired up to get our little pitching machine fired up for our team this spring for some hand-eye coordination training. They also own Frost Gear. Was wearing my sweatshirt today. Quite warm. Highly recommend buying one of those. And thanks, Devo Bats, back on with us. Go check them out. Hopefully we can have him on before the season's over with as we are wrapping this thing up for the year as baseball season's starting for us. And we are excited. Can't wait to be back on the diamond. So let's go ahead and I forgot to say, go ahead and follow us on, we just started our Instagram today. Don't know what's going to be on there. Don't know what kind of things we're going to post. Maybe we'll get to have some fun things throughout the year. People can, maybe if you have a great drill or something, you can send it to us and we'll post it on there, and let's try to keep that going for that. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. It's Fungo Banner PNW. We're also on the TikToks. Go check that out. All right, let's bring on Coach Boyer from the Detroit Tigers.
And the low budget end of that too. I mean, you mentioned just a camera setup. Like if I'm a high school coach or whatever, you want to get your guys all on tape for a day. No matter what you're doing, whether it's hit tape, infield tape, maybe even outfield plays, if you want to get that there. I think you mentioned that comfortability in space too, to have a one-on-one with video, especially kids nowadays. Like if you're barking at them when they're standing in a line, when you're taking ground balls, you're not going to get the same response that you're going to get when you're in a comfortable one-on-one environment, when you're not trying to show them up. Like you're just trying, hey, we're meeting here today to help you get better. Right. And I'm not trying to beat you down or do anything like that. Like, let's just look at how we can get better. And I know that response is so much better than, guys in a group setting for sure.
Yeah. A couple things come to mind on that, Kelly, is like, one, a conversation happening at conversational distance, like sitting side by side, is very different than a conversation, even though the same words might be spoken, at 140 feet, right? Because in order for them to hear you at 140 feet, you have to yell it. And that, no matter what you're saying, it can come off as kind of gruff or like, why is he on my ass right now, so to speak, versus sitting side by side and having like a real genuine conversation and being able to ask questions and take the time to sit down and have that conversation. Two is, if you aren't having that up close conversation, then your language better be nails. Like they better understand exactly what you're trying to tell them. Again, if you're at 140 feet or, beyond 100 feet and you're hitting the fungo and you're barking orders, your language better be rock solid. Like they better have understanding. Otherwise, they're just out there assuming or trying to understand what you're saying. And the next rep happens, less than a minute later. And, if it doesn't go well again, well, what happens? Coach now barks again, another order. And it kind of, he's like, I don't know, why is he on my ass about, I don't know what he's trying to tell me. I don't know what's going on. So you better have really strong language. And what those up close kind of pre-conversations prior to our work do help us is help us create language. And we've done a pretty good job across our organization of creating fundamental language per each department. But that takes time because everybody teaches things different. And we want to make sure that we want our coaches to have their own voices and to say things. We want to have unity in our teach, but it can be said different ways. But there has to be certain things that are being conveyed and also received from the players in a very similar message. So when you say something, they know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that really allows us, when we do sit down and we pull the computer out and we have these conversations, it does allow us to significantly speed up that process, not only coach to coach, but with the players as well, where we're creating this organizational wide understanding, philosophy, and language, which is really important.
The transparency part of that thing, because anybody that's been in Ellensburg, the wind's blowing, and the guys are. I actually found out some of my guys do watch this, and I'll be yelling because that's literally the only way they're going to be able to
hear you. Yeah.
And so I finally had to stop one day. I was like, I'm not yelling at you. I have to. So. Yeah. But still, even at that, even if you're transparent with it, it's not always bought in when you tell them that I'm not actually yelling at you.
For sure. Yeah, it's like you said, it doesn't matter if you're telling them you love them. If you're yelling at 140 feet, it's just a little gruff, it's just a little rough around the edges for sure. So
I think it's proactive too, in the coaching end, right? And we've all played for coaches that were reactive, that knock you down for doing something wrong when you didn't teach the way that you wanted it to be taught, right? I think we're all maybe guilty of that at some point in time. But the more you can have those conversations beforehand, it allows you to get ahead of it, right? It allows the expectations to be out there, everything to be outlined. The reactive coaching just doesn't elicit a good response for growth at all.
Yeah, and there's a ton of ways to do that, right? If it's Twitter, if it's WhatsApp, if it's Instagram, if it's a Facebook group, there are so many different ways to interact with your players outside of practice. If it's just sending them a quote or sending them a practice plan so they have a chance to see it prior to showing up, there's a ton of ways. Text threads get a little bit iffy sometimes, but but there's other ways to create these small groups interactions where, especially in season where something happens and you can post a little video and say, this is what a little description, this is what we were talking about the other day. And now they get to see a video. I did that a ton at UW. We do a ton of it now. I do it more with staff on the professional side. But at UW, we had an internal system, and every night I would send a tweet that I saw, and then it became kind of player driven, where they started to post their own things in this little thread that we had. And I just think it really accelerated our ability to have impactful conversations and understanding of what the things that we were talking about. And also just the practice plan a couple hours before practice starts is an important piece. I want to be prepared for what my day looks like. And I have a chance to digest exactly what the plan is, and not to say that the plan will go exactly as it does in my job. No, I know that better than anybody, I think. When you're scheduling spring training, things go wrong and timing gets off. But I do think it's a simple gesture to send your players to be prepared for. If you want them to be prepared, then prepare them early. Give them an opportunity to see the practice plan or whatever it may be prior. So I think there's lots of ways to easily communicate with your players away from the field, and in today's world of technology and avenues that you can do that.
Yeah, I also think too, real quick, is just you're talking, Billy, you're talking about being direct to your players, not being length of verbiage, especially when mom and dad are always screaming from the grandstands and yelling out. But, what we try to implement is like different coding, colors. We're running number, or numbers or whatever it is that everybody expects to know what you're doing on a hard ball or mid side or whatever, one hop, all those scenarios. So it's more a direct understanding, like, okay, that's the way I need to play that, right? Okay, got it. Moving on. And then once they get into the dugout, then we go in more in length of, okay, what were you thinking? How did you feel when you came approaching that ball? What was the top spin on that? All those variables you can get into, but even down to that, hey, how was your day? It's kind of situation, especially with high school kids, because they're so up and down all the time anyways, they're emotional roller coasters. But I think, being dry, it's just no different than what we see in basketball, right? We were just talking about before we got on is that, it's like herding cats, when you watch these little kids. But if you watch a good coach communicate how to pass that ball, how to play guard, it's simple words, communicate, left, right, up, down, whatever it is, then they'll understand it and then they follow it.
Yeah. Simplicity is absolutely crucial. Like, I mean, especially in a game of like, once that ball's in play, like it's pretty orchestrated, but it's pure chaos sometimes too, like things go awry at times. And it's, especially and we went through this kind of in the professional ranks is when the shifting schemes came up, right? Like all of a sudden, like cut relays are so different. Like, and now it's kind of chaos. You have to, instead of, aligning a shortstop behind a second baseman on a ball in the gap, like sometimes it's hard for that shortstop to get there. And like, maybe it's just a singular one-man cut now, or it just kind of depends. So like the ability to make your queuing simple is absolutely crucial at all levels. Like, as specifically as information gets more and more involved in the player's preparation and training, like just looking at a screen full of numbers is helpful. But like, if you can't take that data and simplify it into like really basic teach points for any player, and I don't care if it's, a major leaguer or a 9-year-old, like simplicity is absolutely crucial. Like, and like you said, like it's simple as, color coding run speed, like green, blue, or yellow or red, like it very, very simple. And like the other thing, like too, like I think is just absolutely out of control is like giving signs, like offensive signs. Like they're so complicated, a lot of the time. And like, they don't have to be that complicated. Like, they can be, and I would argue that, the simpler they are, the harder they are to pick, like, and honestly, like, who cares if they know? Like, they still have to execute, like, so.
DHSD.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll side note quick. So we had a college coach when I was at Corbin, Paul Gale, and Paul hated doing hand signal or just in signals in general, for signs. So one day he was our third base coach was out sick, and so he had a coach in the third base box, and he says, "Okay, guys," and I think we were playing Eastern Oregon, whoever it was, Concordia, I can't remember exactly, but he says, "Hey, okay, I'm going to go to the clap system. Okay, so 1 is bunt, 2 is steal, and 3 is hit and run. So if I call your name and go clap, clap, we're going with the steal." And then literally that's what he did all game. It was usually a clap scenario, and it was just the most. Hey, it was basic, but it worked. He just didn't really want to do all these hand touches and numbers. And we did a number system that, of course, as y'all know, you probably dealt with it, but you tally out and then you have to recount it, and this is 3 and 2, and then of course 1, and you run it through. But yeah, no, Gail hated running the whole number system, man. Simple claps. That's all he wanted.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's unbelievably simplistic. Like, you might want to go a little more complicated than that, but like I think too, with like the implementation of pitch clocks, at the college level and the professional level, like there's just not that much time to have, these really elaborate, like you don't have time to think. Like, it's just, you got 6 or 7 seconds to take a pitch or foul a pitch off and then get back in the box. Like it's happening so fast. So like, I think, simple is much better, So
one of the questions I wanted to ask was when you're dealing with in pro ball, because I'm still waiting for our Dominican or Puerto Rican exchange program for Kittitas High School. So if my administrators are listening, let's get that going. But talk to us about, your communication. You deal with so many different language barriers, culture. Talk to us about how you're handling that with your people from all over the world, not just America, like what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, we have players from Taiwan, we have players from Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Mexico, like Canada, like with French Canadians, like we have them from all over. So like the language barrier is certainly very much a thing. It's, my Spanish is pretty broken and but what I will say is professional baseball has really come a long ways in the way that we, as soon as players are getting either to the academies in the Dominican Republic, like they're going through like a high school education. They're starting there to learn English. By the time most of those guys get to the States, it's pretty good. It's better than most. And then also like I'm surrounded by, our staff members that are also from around the world, that are now coaching in professional baseball. So like I have a Latin American infield coordinator. His name's Angel Baroa. It's from the Dominican Republic, obviously fluent in both languages. So like he helps translate. We help. And then obviously the older players that have been around for a while that are more fluent in the English language, like they'll help translate, like kind of back and forth. Like it's very much a barrier at times, but I would like to like give the credit to the players. Like they're the ones that are doing a lot of the work on this front, like learning a new language, and which is hard. Like, it's hard to do that. But I think Major League Baseball and most organizations across Major League Baseball are doing a pretty fantastic job of getting these guys to the academies and starting them with an education, a high school education and getting them to learn English as fast as possible. So it doesn't always go that easy. Like it certainly, some guys come up faster than others, and some guys are fluent by the time they come to the States, and some guys are, a year or two into it and they're, 17 years old and they're coming to the States for the first time, and they're still in that process. But I think we've kind of, there's enough for us to get by usually. So, and then obviously we have translators, and then some of our players actually have their own personal translators. That most of those guys are not Spanish speaking; they're of another language. But we do have individuals in the organization that do have personal interpreters.
Gotta be careful of those interpreters, though. You talk language. Language is a piece of it, right? But there's also learning style. Like, do you guys spend much time like really honing in on learning style? Are you trying to throw like everything at them and just to find a way for it to stick, or are you identifying on the front end like whether guys are visual or auditory or whatever?
So yeah, I wouldn't say we do visual or audio. Like the approach we take specifically in the infield space with the Tigers is we're trying to give them as much information as possible. Now, the other side of that is we do movement screening. Like we have pretty robust understanding of like how a player hinges, how he moves, like what his limitations may be. That's our job as coaches to kind of work around, but we take the approach of like trying to provide them with as much information as possible. Like again, like forehand play is not forehand play. There's like direction of momentum dictates the way that you either transition out after catch. It dictates foot patterning. It dictates arm slots. It's the same thing on the backhand side. So what we try to do is we try to give them as many play style or technique options as possible and explain why we think these are options, and then let them play with total creative player freedom. Like when the time comes, they're going to feel like they have the tool in the tool belt to accomplish the task. That's the biggest thing for us is we spend a lot of time on trying to identify, and that's part of the tracking is trying to identify the certain play styles that happen, how often they happen, where they typically happen on the field, and then try to replicate those in representative training environments that allow our players to grow and understand, certain play styles. The back end one's the biggest one, like specifically like in America, like they almost all catch the ball with the right foot forward. And like, there's this really big emphasis to get your eyes behind it and like get your eyes back behind your glove. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to catch the baseball, but that's an incredibly difficult position to transition out of. Like, like, do they have the strength to do that? Are they a quad dominant defender versus a kind of hip or hamstring dominant defender? The way that like those guys that are more hamstring or hip dominant, that's going to be a very difficult position for them to get into and out of. So we try to individualize it more that way. And then again, just providing them with as many options as we possibly can.
We've talked before on this a lot of, and there's limitations of coaches, right? Like your experience, what you know, what you study is by far and large, like superior to most people, like your top percentage of coaches because of the amount of time that you put into that. And you're a good coach too. I'll pump you up a little bit there, but
Thanks, buddy.
A lot of people, especially in the high school space, like, I mean, you talked about being thrust into second-rate basketball, but there's people that get thrust into, coaching that have no experience in that, and you're probably dealing with a player that knows a lot more than you, right? So I guess the point I'm getting at is that, like, I think that growth happens whether for you to go from knowing half of what you did a long time ago to what you know now. Like, it takes time and work and effort, right? If you want to be great at anything, like, you really have to study at it and grow as a coach. But what would you suggest to like someone getting into something that maybe it's a coach that coached outfield forever and now you're an infield, like what are some resources? Where do you start? What do you look at? Where can those guys grow as coaches to hone on their craft?
Well, I think first of all, you have to watch the game. Like, you can't, like, that's what players don't like. Players don't watch the game anymore. They just play it all the time. And they don't watch it. I think that, like, first of all, like, you have to watch the game and you have to see it through kind of a coach's lens. Those of us that are in it and are really paying attention, like, like I have, like, when I watch a game, like, I am very focused on the defensive play and the base running. And then the pitching guys, obviously they're on the camera the most, but like, they see it through a completely different lens. So I think like that to start is the most fundamental thing is you have to watch the game. Like, you have to have it on all the time. But like, I've kind of taken the approach, like, one, Twitter is it's a double-edged sword, right? It's really fantastic and really awful all at the same time. There's a lot of ways to learn a lot of things there or see or hear new thoughts. The arguing, over what's right or wrong is annoying and disruptive to the coaching community for sure. But I do think, like, the one thing that the infield community kind of across the country, it has really done an amazing job of is there's not a ton of that. Like, it's really collaborative. And like, I think there's a lot of ways to go on there and see how guys are talking about certain things, or you might see a drill on there and like that might, that's similar to a drill that I've done, but it's different. How can I bring those two together? Or, and it's simple as like, I get this quite often, like, and I know other guys do, and I do this, like shooting a coach a DM, like, hey, I saw your tweet about this drill. Like, I'm curious of like, what's the primary focus, or what are you finding is, why do you love this drill so much? And what I find is like people are pretty willing to share their thoughts, specifically in the defensive front. I don't know much about the hitting space. It's pretty torn, I think, at times, but I think there's a lot of resources on Instagram and Twitter and I mean, a simple infield Google search, like, you could find more drills on there than you could possibly imagine. Like that I mean, that's something literally we do, is when I sit down with players is we'll pull Google up and we'll just start going to photos, like, and start looking at photos and different body styles and different techniques and throwing slots and like commonality between, certain things. So we do that quite often. And again, like, we're sharing those in text threads and Slack threads or whatever your internal communication is. And I think just talking with people is how you start to really build out your thought process. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, I believe in things that are completely different than I did 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, and even a year ago. There's things that we have kind of found out that are not great options, so that we've moved on from. And those stem from conversations or a tweet, or, man, sometimes it's the Discovery Channel. Like, I mean, sometimes it's just weird stuff, like you see a tiger jump and you're like, wow, that was kind of weird. Like, I wonder if we could use that for pre-pitch prep stuff,
Yeah.
like it sometimes. I mean, my mind works a little bit in strange ways sometimes, but everybody's does. And like, everybody can find a way to grow from a large number of avenues. Like, I don't think there's a right, wrong, or indifferent way. And if you're a basketball coach that, just got asked to coach the baseball team, in high school, like, what I would recommend is put them in representative design as much as possible. Like, less drills, more game style practice, like let them play. And like that, it might not be the fastest way to, a bunch of wins or a bunch of systematic like systems, but it is going to be the fastest way to growth, I think, so just put them in as representative designs as possible.
Well, I think the game is always revolving, right? I mean, training now, look at how athletes train. I mean, 20 years ago, it's completely, just even within the last 5 years, how an athlete trains for what they used to. And I think another good avenue is that ABCA, all the videos they put out, you become a member of that. You can get all these on-demand videos, which Eric and I were just talking about a few days ago, how cool that is, just to be able to push of a button. And I can watch some collegiate coach or professional coach back east give a simple infield drill that he does for his athletes that you can implement to your practice to just one step better your team, over what you're doing now. And so I think just being able to be elusive, and be creative, like you're saying, Billy, think outside the box. That I think we have so many coaches are so structured and they follow the guidelines of the rules. This is how it's supposed to be played. This is how, well, think a little bit different. Watch the Discovery Channel or Animal Planet. Watch, maybe there's something there that you could be that next inventive guy that, it's like that, the situation with the Yankees and their steal, patterns and how to get that extra bounce step on grabbing a bag, so those kind of things I think help grow the game, but also keeps, the part of the game growing.
No, for sure. I totally agree. I think you just gotta, and the more people you talk to and the more you kind of put yourself out there, the more thoughts you hear. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with just the large group of different minds in the professional game and how that just leads to, a different way of thinking about certain things. It's unique and pretty awesome, to be quite frank. It's you get to hear a lot of guys that have a lot of experience and very unique vision on the way things should be done.
Well, I got 3 questions for you, hard-hitting ones to wrap this thing up.
Sure.
A couple funny ones and a serious one, I guess. We'll start with the serious one. We got a listener write it. I texted a good friend of mine, Coach Nate Phillips. He's a softball coach here at KTS. And I was like, "Yeah, I got Billy on," and because he was sending me videos that you would do. I said, "Yeah, we know him," and he's like, "Oh, cool." What would you tell a young guy getting into coaching, specifically if they want to find their way into professional baseball?
Well, I think it's not easy to do, but 2, I think it's about as easy as it's ever been. In a lot of ways, like, we're looking for bright people that can think outside the box, that can really coach. Like, you saw this wave of young coaches kind of coming into professional baseball over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, and a lot of them have stuck because they have really great understanding of the numbers and the data and other things. But the other piece is that they can really coach. They can really connect with people. Like, that's like, for me, like, when I'm interviewing an individual for a position, I mean, I want to know that they can coach. I want to know that they have genuine thought and belief in what they're trying to teach. I think that's crucial. I don't want to hear a bunch of buzzwords and things that you heard on Twitter. Like, I think those things are important, but like, it's not uncommon for me to ask, like, what are your pillars of infield play? And individuals are pretty quick to kind of give you 3 or 4 things. But when you start to like dive in deeper and say, okay, well, can you expand on X, Y, or Z? Like that's where I think you can separate yourself, is having really deep thought of on certain things, and like really like taking the time to sit down and gather your thoughts of what you really believe in. Like that's how you win an interview for me. In professional baseball, is like you have to have the ability to convey your message. You have to have the ability to connect with players. You have to have the ability to connect with other coaches, some of which may have played in the big leagues or may not have, and some may not even have played professional baseball. Like you don't have to have been a professional player to be a professional coach. In fact, I know quite a few of them that are major league coaches right now that never even played a single game of professional baseball. And they're some of the best coaches on the planet. So I think with the abundant amount of information that we have available to us, like there's a real opportunity to grab anything you want, and then also build your own layers on top of that, I think is really important. But it's communicating, it's connecting, it's LinkedIn, it's Twitter, like those are all avenues, to connect with the right people.
A couple fun ones to end with. This first one stems off a conversation we had off air. What is harder to coach? Pro baseball, D1 baseball, or first, second grade basketball?
First and second grade basketball is by far the hardest to teach. Because here's why I think that is. Last night I was coaching my 7-year-old son's basketball game, and it was me and another father coaching 6 players in a game, and 200 parents around the gym, all screaming simultaneously at the kids. So it's like there's just sensory overload of what's going on, and one kid takes off running the wrong direction to the wrong hoop, and the whole gym takes over and other direction, and it's just pure chaos. And so I would say first and second grade basketball by far.
Oh my gosh, it is nothing but chaos, man.
Chaos.
But you just got, chaos. Oh my gosh. Okay, the last one. This is the most important one for everybody here. Who will always win on the back nine, Billy Boyer or Kelly Gow?
Just stop it.
On the back nine?
Yeah, just who comes through at the end? Yeah. Are they getting that beer at the turn? And
there's a tough stretch for both of us on the back nine, at Washington National. So you go 14, 15, 16. And 17. Yeah, it's a pretty tough little stretch there. So
I think
I'm gonna plead the fifth on that as well too.
We're all pretty aware of our capabilities, Anyway, I haven't dug in until like if you looked at our handicaps and you compared like who actually does better on a given day. One, I don't care about it, but like two, that could be something. If we're talking pure score, like there's not beating this guy. Like maybe within a stroke or two here or there, but like I don't know if I've gotten you on a side.
I don't know about that. Maybe not yet. Close.
Maybe not yet. Yeah. Plenty of winter golf. Winter golf is hot. It's not hot right now, but October to November was
it was stellar. A good stretch. It was a good stretch for sure.
You have a baby, you have some snow, you have some frozen temps, it shuts things down pretty quick.
Yes, it does.
Do you get to play any golf down there? Do you have time in that busy schedule to get around?
No. I might take my clubs with me just for maybe one day, but we have a couple of off days over the 7 or 8 weeks, but it's pretty tough to get out.
That's probably one of the bigger changes in pro ball now, right? Like it's less Marlboro Reds and Miller Lights at night and more like deep diving into what just happened, right? Let's not just try again tomorrow.
It's pretty constant. It's not a lot of guys leaving the clubhouse at noon, and hitting the course for 9 holes. I mean, that does happen, but it's again, like the more information you have, the more curiosity it brings, and the more that you end up diving and going down these rabbit holes and trying to find ways to help your players not only get to the big leagues, but impact your major league team or, help them win a World Series, hopefully.
If someone ends up at Tigers camp this spring, where are they going to find you?
They're going to find me on field 2, hopefully running a defensive session out of the office and on the dirt, hopefully. So So
You still got that signature? How many signatures you get asked at a spring there?
well, most of them don't know who I am, so it's
You still get you get the little 8-year-old that just sees you as
you get
big bald
occasionally.
bearded guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, he looks like a
you
player.
still look like you could hang.
Yeah. So
here you go.
when you're walking next to Javi Baez or Max Clark or one of those animals, like those guys they don't care about the coach. That if the number starts with an 8 or a 9, like it's usually not a very important signature.
I'll throw this out there. If any of our listeners tweet at us a picture of a Billy Boyer signature from spring training, we will send you a sweatshirt, a hat, whatever we got.
Good luck.
That's all right.
Good luck.
Awesome. Well, Billy, thank you so much, man. Good luck this season, and I'm excited for you to go warm up while the rest of us freeze here.
I appreciate you guys, and I think I can speak for everybody in the Northwest. Appreciate you, getting coaches on here and sharing some thought for everybody around this area. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Of course. All right.
Now entering from the bullpen,
well, thank you, listeners, as we wrap up our episode with Coach Billy Boyer, the minor league infield coordinator, field coordinator with the Detroit Tigers. Go check him out on Twitter. Go follow him. He's a great follow with everything you need. And good luck, Coach, this year. I know you're warm in Florida right now, and it snowed in Ellensburg, Washington today. So that's great. Hopefully you're nice and warm, toasty, and things are going great as you kick off the spring training. Thank you to all our listeners who have tuned in. Please go follow us on all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and now on Instagram, Fungo Banner PNW. Go follow us. We'll see if we can get some fun stuff throughout the off season of the podcast. As we got a few more guests lined up. We've recorded a few episodes already. We're going to tease the next one. We're pretty excited. The next one's Rob Reese. We're excited to have him on. That will be dropping next week, the week before high school baseball kicks off here in the state of Washington. Good luck to everybody. Thanks to our sponsors, Safeguard, Devo Bats, Max BP, and Top Tier Sports. Go check all those guys out. And we'll be back next week with Coach Rob Reese and plenty more great content for your speakers and arrows. Thank you, everybody. Please go rate and review us if you can. That just helps us get to grow a little bit more. Leave the reviews that we love seeing all the responses. If you're going to do a 1-star, don't review. Just let that go. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care, and thank you, Coach Boyer, for your time. Take care, everybody.